Hello, I'm Shelley Rothus, and I'm a different kind of victim. Okay, now part two is gonna be based upon my feelings and about the relationships, about the bullying incident, and what had happened, and why it affected me so badly, and how it panned out and fanned out to where it went to. Probably gonna be more than one part. As for that, as to based on what I've found out throughout all of this, based upon all the lies and all the people, saying this, that, and that. So I'm going to start with the beginning as to why I felt the way I did and about the whole situation happening again. Okay, so this is actually going to go back to last year after the last bullying incident, not the recent. So, as I had stated before, is that I wanted out. And I thought I was out, actually. I honestly thought that I was completely out of there. And, stating that I felt much better to be away from that. So, with the last bullying incident, the way it ended, I had stated that I wanted completely out. And I had gone through my list of friends on Facebook to see who I would keep and who I would get rid of. Like I said, I'd come to that one person, Ken, and like I said, I was considering. I almost deleted him off my friends list, unfriended him, and then I thought, well, he helped me out so much, maybe we could still be friends if nobody finds out that we still talk to each other. Well, maybe my first instinct was correct, that I should just let it go, because as you've seen in the last incident, it was based upon lies. He ended up believing them, and he ended up, still holding that against me, and, going downwards as to how he treated me even after the incident ended. So, okay, I guess it was a mistake. I mean, I didn't want it to happen, but again, I ended up getting pulled in. I didn't think I would, because I thought I was like, vanished, you know. And after that incident, that's when I had, come to my realization about my abuse in real life. Like I said, it was actually Ken who helped me come to that realization. And that's why this bullying incident has a lot to do with that. Because based upon what he had given me advice and support during that last bullying incident, was help me realize a lot of things in my real life based upon his wisdom and words of advice and all that. So it just happened to be during that time, right before I was going to finally try to escape my 3 abusers. And I had started talking to my cousin Edward, and he comes up with the idea, for my safety while trying to escape, was to, have a PM group to keep everybody updated as to where I'm at and everything else. Because, part of my abuser's abuse was lies and trying to get me Baker-acted or falsely arrested, all of that. So I had to keep myself protected. So the only person I really had at the time that I really trusted was Ken. And yes, even though I knew people in, my real life, it was very hard for me to have friendships or any types of relationships, for that matter, when I was with my abusers, because they tried to control that too, and who they liked, who they didn't, and it was very, hard for me and very stressful just to have a relationship with anybody while I lived with them. So, like I said, Ken was the first person that I actually trusted in my life, and I mean, I look back now, and that's why it was so hard. It's just hard to believe that this actually happened. Anyways, back to what I'm talking about. So I made the PM group, and Ken was the first person I trusted in there, even throughout the entire thing. And believe it or not, it was him that even throughout the entire time that I had that group, it still made me feel comfortable to open up in it. I mean, like I said, it's not something you're proud of that you're a victim of abuse, and I shared things in there that were very personal and extremely hard for me to share with anybody. And whether he realizes it or not, just knowing that he was in there and sharing that personal information made me feel more comfortable doing it. So that's why this was very traumatizing to me too, since he ended up being the one that invited other people in there to share things that were very private and personal to me, and was hard enough for me to share. I'm sorry. So, anyways, so that's what that group was. So it came to where, I was out of the bullying clan and I thought I was free. I mean, I honestly felt my life had changed. Basically, kind of like, any victim getting out of an abuse situation, their life changes as to how they feel with their life as a person and how they see life differently. There's actually positives and negatives to it as to how they see life and how it can affect them. But after getting out of that bullying clan, and I became who I was again. I became who I was proud of to be. And that was somebody that I could respect and, look in the mirror and feel proud about. I actually felt, stress-wise and happiness as who I am as a person. I felt much better. I felt real. I didn't feel fake anymore. And I felt free like a bird, like, wow. Even though I was going through stressful stuff, trying to escape and everything, that's another thing that group did for me. And that's why it was so special to me, because I did, grow closer to certain people in that group during that time. I had actually reached out to my friend Mary, and the reason I reached out to her was because she went and got schooling like me and was trained, and she also has personal experience with DV, domestic violence. So now I'm going to say this straightforward. It is, in comparison, a piece of cake to help another victim of domestic violence than it is to help yourself when you are the victim. Much, much easier. Because when you are the victim and you come to that realization of it is just boom. Especially in my case, because in my case I was drugged on medications I'd never needed since before I was an adult, so it ruined my cognitive ability. So once I had withdrawn from those medications, my memory started coming back. I started being able to cognitively process things and start doing things that I wasn't able to do while I was on those medications that I never needed, that my psychiatrist realized, because I was falsely misdiagnosed several times and also put on many medications throughout my life that actually caused me more harm than any good. Okay, so now going back, that group was what helped me during my escape time to actually keep me confident, to keep going, to get to my goal of getting out and escaping. So it was extremely, that's why I feel so traumatized. I'm still extremely traumatized. I can't remember feeling this traumatized I would have to say since the last time that my parents had got me falsely Baker-acted. So that's how badly this has traumatized me. I mean, like I stated, even with relationships and how I feel around other people, as for feeling comfortable, I mean, during my time of escape after that last incident, it did affect me as to how I feel about people and actually wanting relationships due to the things that happened during the last bullying incident. And that would happen to be like, such as Ken being in a hate group, and him believing lies, and the way he started treating me. So, immediately after that. So it was very hard for me to even want to have relationships. I wasn't at the point where I was anxious being around people all the time, or even wanting to be around them, where, I didn't have that issue yet. It wasn't until the recent bullying incident when Ken had gone into my group and humiliated me in front of, people I even know in real life, that, really was what traumatized me. And, even now, just even the thought, it's like my chest is starting to hurt, just the thought of being around people. As for PM groups, one of the lies was that I was sharing screenshots from PM groups. So we'll go to that. I was also traumatized with that. During my escape, just from getting out of that clan and what happened as to him being in a hate group and all the lies that came about and how it ended up affecting, how I got along with Ken, So when I was trying to escape, I ended up, meeting other DV victims that were in, chat groups on Facebook, and also video chats where there would be 3 or more people. I'll be completely honest, I had to stop doing them because I was traumatized by being in groups. Now, yes, I had my PM group that was private and everything else, but one of the rules I had was it wasn't a chat group. It was mainly for myself and to, have evidence. Sure, they could say this or that, something that helped with it in a positive way. It wasn't really a chat group where people, communicated. Those people didn't really even know each other, only certain ones knew each other, like, Ken and Carla knew each other. That was it. And as I stated, Carla was only in there because she was a witness to an incident where my parents' dog had attacked me. And she was on the phone with me when it happened. So that's the reason why I let her in. I did start to have a trust for her as for my group and keeping it safe and not sharing information, as I've shown that didn't happen. So that was where I was let down too. Okay, back to the groups and about, being around people and stuff. So I ended up stopping doing those, video chats, or I'd end them early. And I never joined any PM group that I was invited into for the domestic violence victims groups. And I never really engaged in it. And that was because of my fear and anxiety of being around, especially more than 3 people in a group and talking. If there's more than 3 people, including myself, so me and 2 others, any more than that, I'm extremely anxious, especially now, just the thought of it as you see it. I say I can't. Okay. Just the thought of it being in a group with more than 3 people is, scary to me because of the incidents that happened, in the hate group, and even in the recent hate group, and seeing what was said and done, it makes me extremely nervous, and, even in real life, after that incident where Ken had humiliated me, just the thought of, being around, groups of people. I used to go to certain events here at this place that I live now, but now I don't want to be in any groups whatsoever. More than 3 people altogether just makes me extremely nervous. I don't trust people at all. After the incident with Ken, in the, not recent, but the last incident, I figured the way I looked at it, and the reason why I have extreme trust issues now, is because he was the first person that I trusted. And I look at it this way, the first person that I actually thought was a really good person and wouldn't do, something that, totally despicable and cruel, ended up doing it. But I still lost certain trust for people after the last incident before he did that and this recent, due to him believing lies and the way he started treating me and the softly ghosting me and, just the way he spoke to me was, kind of in more disrespectful and, not so nice ways in certain things, just how he spoke to me and whatnot. So I figured, well, if somebody like that could just do a turnaround and, act like that, what makes me think that anybody else wouldn't do the same, So I honestly didn't want any relationships as to where I would see them as something that would actually last. Even now, I don't see any relationships I have, even now, as ever lasting, as to where that person won't do something despicable or cruel to me. I actually have those expectations, Just recently something happened where somebody did something not so nice, and it didn't bother me. I was like, like actually a couple people. So I was like, because I just don't have any expectations as for relationships everlasting, and that's why. Because the first person I ever trusted, ended up, doing that, and it became a trauma. So, it's like they say that certain people that will be traumatized, it's due to like one incident happening where it affected them badly, which would be like the last bullying incident, not the recent, where, Ken started, believing lies, and then it affected how we spoke with each other and our friendship together. And then, of course, where I was traumatized, where it was really bad because I still have nightmares based upon it. I have trouble sleeping. I feel anxious more often, by the thoughts of, when I see people, and when even many times when I talk to them, I feel anxious, or even the thought of it. So that's where, they say that somebody can get, even a mental illness by something that happens to them, that it could bring it out. Like, it just happens based upon certain situations. I mean, like I said, we're all human, we're all different. Many people think, well, really, that did that to you? They don't really, they're not that person. Like I said, empathy requires you to understand that you will not be able to totally understand why or how somebody was affected. And, you can't, that means that you cannot be judgmental based upon what your own thoughts are at that time, because you will never be that person to really understand how they feel about it based on their thoughts physically and how it affected them mentally. So, that is why it had caused so much problems, even for my relationships in, outside of online relationships. It had, severely affected me also with my relationships in all areas, and how I see the world. We talk about that in mental health too, based on how you see the whole world, in a negative or positive way. And I could say that I see the world in a very negative way. Let's just say the chapter that I was going to have that was based upon that group that was special to me, that helped me so much. Let's just say that it's not going to be Teen Pink anymore. It's going to be that chapter, I believe it, I already thought of it. It's a scary world after all. Because it was that ended up traumatizing me even more so than I could ever have imagined. So that's what my new chapter is going to be based upon. So I wanted to give a little feedback as to how these situations, affected me. Now, I had stated that the bullying incident does relate to my 3 abusers and what I went through with them. And yes, that is my personal story, and yes, it relates a lot to it, which I'll be getting to little by little, like I have throughout these videos, I've stated how that incident relates to my 3 abusers and what I went through. And I'm going to continue doing it. It's my story, and it's going to keep on going, and that's it. Whether people like it or not, it is my personal story. And that's what I'll be getting to. And I also will be getting to, based upon the recent incident and as to how I figured out why it got to where it did, you know, who said what and what actually happened. You know, I can't say positively, but I have a pretty good idea. I know it was all based on lies, but I had to pan it out. And I did have a point of going through all of that, which I will explain in the next partake based upon that. So, there you go. That was the little, you know, part as to how that affected me as for the relationships part, and how those bullying incidents affected me based upon my relationships that I had with those people, and how it affected me even in what they say real life. So yes, online abuse, bullying can affect somebody in all areas. Bullying is abuse. They call it bullying, but hey, it's abuse. Period. Whether it's done online or in person, it's abuse. And I find it important that even the mental health field gets a better idea as to how it works and why it's actually more important than they probably realize to really get on top of it and really understand it and actually be able to help those that go through things that I myself have gone through. And I also hope it helps, like, even teachers and parents, you know, to actually understand this topic even better. So, I'm Shelley Rothus, and I'm a different kind of victim. I'll see you next time.